Yes, I'm still here, Hollywood. And coming up on today's episode...
And then it was Beverly Hills Cop. I always say I wasn't an overnight sensation. I was a same-day sensation. It was great in every way, except for the fact that I was 25. I didn't know how to be a person yet because I'd been on welfare my whole life, and then just not on welfare, just poor. And everybody was not just staring, they were saying things like, "Sign my girlfriend's breasts." My father was the most enthusiastic and ingenious abuser that you can imagine.
I'm sorry, Bronson. That
No,
sounds
you
rough.
mustn't be sorry, because it's like saying to the diamond, "I'm sorry that lasers came at you and gave you facets."
Accents in film and television can very much define an actor's devotion to their craft. Whether it's Meryl Streep's Polish accent in Sophie's Choice or Frances McDormand's Minnesota dialect in Fargo, the formation of those voices tell the story of where the character is from. But there's one actor who reached overnight fame in the 1980s for his uniquely hilarious accent that left the movie-going world scratching their heads. This is Still Here Hollywood. I'm Steve Kmetko. Join me with today's guest, Serge, from Beverly Hills Cop, Bronson Pinchot. If you'd like to be more involved with us at Still Here Hollywood, you definitely can. Just visit patreon.com/stillherehollywood. You can support us for as little as $3 a month. You can get our episodes a day before they post anywhere else. You can see what guests will be coming up and submit questions for them. You can even tell us what stars you want us to have on as guests. You'll see what goes on before and after the episode, plus exclusive behind-the-scenes info, pics, video, and more. Again, that's patreon.com/stillherehollywood. Bronson, how are you?
I'm very good, and I'm in the very, very most perfect place to interview, because I've had one of those weeks where life has scooped me out like a hard-boiled egg, gouged me out, mixed me with a lot of exotic spices that I wasn't really in the mood for, and then plopped me back in. That's always the best time to be interviewed, because you've been turned into a lobster stuffed with crab, and you had all your insides taken out and handed back to you in a new form.
Did you have surgery or something this week?
No, I was putting the finishing touches on the prologue of my memoir, and the prologue of my memoir, as requested, was the most painful part of an extremely difficult part of my life. And so getting notes on your own
Life?
well, and not only that, on the ground zero of your being, is something that has to be experienced to be grasped, because you want, it exactly reminds me, if you look at 1 or 2 or 3 or 13 cute animal videos on Instagram, then of course they keep coming up. And I am very fond of, for reasons I think must be psychologically astute, I'm very fond of like rescue animals that are beyond hope, and then they love them until they're better. And so, they always come in, and if they're cats, they're like, or wolves or foxes or anything, if they've been abandoned and hurt, they're just murderous. And then they show the thing about, and then finally they're just like in somebody's lap. And I think it's all of our lives. I'm sure it's yours too, to some extent. But when somebody is asking you to visit and revisit when you were in the trap or run over on the side of the road, and then gives you notes, it's got to be lived to be understood. And so I'm not even saying they weren't useful, but it is unusual. It's like your very own therapist saying, "Yeah, Steve, yeah, dig deeper." And then you do, and you're sobbing, and they go, "Actually, it's time for my next client. Thank you so much." I mean, it's like that. Have you
We
ever
have
had
to
that
stop
one?
now.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they have to, but it's a very good time to be interviewed because it's all fresh, and it does put your big boy pants on you. It does. It's good. Woo! But it really reminds me of being, and I admire them so much, competition divers. It's so beautiful, isn't it? But it's like they do that final bounce, and then somebody grabs the board and says, "No, don't. Actually, there's something wrong with the water," and you're already, yeah, it's a thing.
Bronson, how did you get in the business?
I did a play at Yale in a little squash court. And it was an Ionesco play, very difficult play called The Lesson, which was published in the 40s, and it has had these undertones of Nazism and fascism and all kinds of stuff, and it was supposed to be funny at the same time. And the director, who later became a very famous film director, wanted me. It was a cast of 3, me and 2 young ladies, and every rehearsal he would say, "All right, so I want you to do the lines while you hump her. That's what you're going to do." And this went on for days. And I finally said, "This is not okay. I would get that as a 20-minute acting exercise, but we're on day 3. We're opening in a week." And he would say, "Well, just get down and start to grind." I said, here's the thing. The posters are at the printer. The program is at the printer, and I know because I designed them both. And if you want this play to go on, you're going to have to leave, and I'm going to finish it higgledy-piggledy by myself because I'm not doing any more humping while you sit there and watch. So he left, and we all looked at each other and said, "Let's make this work." And we did make it work. And a young fellow came to see it who was in music composition. His teacher was Maury Yeston, who was writing incidental music for an off-Broadway play. And Maury said to his class, "God, we're auditioning people, and they're just not funny. I know there's someone right underfoot, right here, that's funny." And his student said, "I just saw this guy named Bronson Pinchot." And he said, "Great, I'll get him an audition." And he said, "Have him call me." So I called him, and he said, "I don't even need to see you." He said, "You're great. Go down." So I went, did the audition in New York. It was for Tommy Tune and his casting director. They made me wait 5 hours because I was the charity case. But then I did the audition, and they came way up and said, "Where the fuck did you come from?" Can I say fuck?
Yes.
Okay, so fuck. So they said, "Where the fuck did you come from?" And I said, "I've been sitting in your lobby for 5 hours. I'm really hungry." And they said, "Well, you're really good, too." So the casting director, Mary Cahoon, took me under her wing, and she cast me in a play and called Poor Little Lambs, which was about the Yale Whiffenpoofs. And the producers of Risky Business came to see it and cast me in Risky Business, and I was off.
And one thing led to another.
It only took 3 movies, and then it was Beverly Hills Cop. I improvised in 3 movies back to back, and the improv is what stood out. So they were having trouble casting this role in Beverly Hills Cop, who was then named Jack. And he was a typical 1984 character in a comedy, in the sense that he was stereotypically gay, and his only reason for being was for Eddie to trounce him and insult him. They said, "We can't make it funny." I said, "Really? Really? I can't think why." And they said, "Can you think of anything?" And I said, there's nothing. Okay, let me see. So I looked at it, and finally the voice of an Israeli makeup lady that I'd had came to me, and I thought, I'm going to do it as Lily. So I did it, and the director said, "That's it. What would you call him?" And I said, "Serge." And so we improvised it, and then the movie came out. The day that it came out, I was walking up. Do you know the Ralphs on Sunset?
Well, there's probably more than one, but I know of a
Ralph's at
Ralph's
Sunset and Poinsettia.
in West Hollywood.
Yeah.
Right.
And a friend of mine said, "Go read Newsweek right now." I said, "Well, I'll have to go read it at the store. I can't afford it." So I went, and it said, "A singular actor named Bronson Pinchot steals the movie." And I thought, interesting. Okay. And as I was walking home, and I looked at the sidewalk recently, still like that, covered with cracks, and a car jumped the curb, drove up on the sidewalk toward me, and I thought, well, here we go. And a bunch of teenagers jumped out and mobbed me. I thought they were going to kill me. And so that was it. And then from that came Perfect Strangers. Not from the teenagers, from the thing. But I always love to say, because it's just true, and when cliches are true, you realize why they're so fun. I always say I wasn't an overnight sensation. I was a I was a same day sensation. It came out, they jumped the sidewalk. And I was like, this can't be, but it just was. That's the way it was. And I was already on a sitcom, a crappy little sitcom, without a very, very good lines to say. And meanwhile, the producers of Perfect Strangers were saying, how's it going? And I was like, that's not really very good. And it tanked, and then they just said, come on. And that was it. We debuted in the top 10 and
stayed there
for a long, long time. And it was great in every way, except for the fact that I was 25. I didn't know how to be a person yet because I'd been on welfare my whole life, and then just not on welfare, just poor. And everybody was not just staring, they were saying things like, sign my girlfriend's breasts. And if I would demur with what I thought was great charm, they would then say that they would kill me. I mean, I didn't know what to do with that. I didn't know what to do with the money except spend every cent. And I didn't know what to do with people staring. Although one wonderful thing happened that did kind of ground me a little bit. Do you remember I Love Juicy? It was on Melrose, and it was this great place, one of the great places. They did
fruits,
delicious
smoothies and things.
Smoothies and things, and it was just absolutely incredible. One of the first of its kind. So it was all glass, and it must have been about 1986, 87. I just wanted it so badly. I'm crossing the street, and every single face. And it sounds conceited to say, but this is just what happened. Every single face at the window was, smashed to the glass, like, look, and I thought, oh, please, just God, oh, can I just get some juice? So I just said, calm down. And I went up to the bar. It was tiny. There was a blonde woman with her back to me looking at the menu. So it was such a tiny place, we were this close. I didn't have any idea who was this blonde. I saw her long hair. And then she turned to look and see if maybe her partner was, she sensed a body. It was me. And she turned, so we were this close, and it was Catherine Deneuve. And I went, oh, and she went, oh. And so from that moment, I was like, okay, you need to understand that this is a telegram from God telling you it's not their fault. Kath, and I wanted so badly to say, you don't know me, but this is really funny, but she was over me. But that was a great telegram. Like, Bronson, it's like you can't control it. Catherine Deneuve turned around and you made the same sound, and then she made your sound, and now calm down and get over yourself. And that was really great.
I met her several times. She is just breathtaking.
She's amazing. And I would love to meet her someday and tell her the story, because I'm sure that she would absolutely love it. Because at the same time, I used to pass Carol Burnett in some little place in Westwood, and I would, kind of go, like, kind of drool with, like, you're my comedy goddess. And she would just look past me. And then she was at an upfront. We were doing the upfront for some year of Perfect Strangers, and she was in the first row. And I had written this comedy bit for Mark Lynn-Baker and myself, and nobody got it. So we're dying, but we always thought it was funny to die. To us, it was win-win. Either they get it or they don't get it, and that's even funnier. And there was 500 people there, silence, except Carol, who was screaming at every joke. Screaming, because she genuinely thought it was funny, and she knew that we were tanking, and she knew that we thought it was funny that we were tanking. She's laughing and laughing and laughing, and afterwards she threw her arms around me and said, do you have any idea how much I love you? I said, well, no, because every time I see you at the Westwood Marquee, and I'm like on my knees with worship for you, you look right through me. And she said, I've never seen you in my life, darling. And I said, I see you every single Saturday. And she's like, oh, darling, how can that be? So you don't even know.
Right.
And then we did a play together, and she said to me once, how do you come up with this stuff? Because we were doing a funny song, and I was coming up with physical stuff. I said, are you serious? She said, how do you come up with this stuff? I said, watching you when I was 12? What are you, nuts? You know better than anybody. It's like, it's so wonderfully, no one would believe how the ships pass in the dark, because she swore she was. And then she was saying, what's your inspiration? I was like, I'm holding on to her. You. This girl, she's like all the really great people. She was so truly humble. There's crappy imitation humble, which makes us gag. And then there's true humility, which is breathtaking.
Right.
Breathtaking every time.
I interviewed her once for something we were doing at CBS, and I interviewed her at TV City. And she made a joke while she was answering one of the questions about her husband being buried in a box over against the wall. And then before we could air the piece, she called me and said, "Could you take that part out?"
Bless her heart.
And I said, "Yes, sure, of course we can." "Why?" "Well, he died not that long ago, and I think it might be,
Exactly.
in bad taste." So, yeah, we took it right out. But,
You'd do anything for her, and I personally would do anything for anybody with a heart. Anything. But there's so many, people with armor on in show business who come at you with that, just like hack you with the sword, and then you're like, "Well, I won't give you the time of day." Well, but I remember we were doing this play, and at lunchtime, I always stayed behind. I didn't go out because I wanted to go over my choreography and whatever. And she would never go out because she just, I don't know why, she'd eat her little egg salad sandwich, teeny little egg salad sandwich. And she's eating once, and she looks at me, and I'm sitting there like this, and she's sitting there like this. And she said, "You are an introvert who does a damn good imitation of an extrovert." And I said, "Oh, and how would you know that?" And she said, "Takes one to know one, darling." And then she went back to her sandwich.
Yep, that sounds right on.
I mean, it gives me chills even now because it's like, oh my goodness, that's not even a conversation. That's just, she's knighting me. And she was absolutely right. I'm so introverted. And for every minute I spend on a red carpet, I need about 16 hours in sensory deprivation because it's so phony and it's so like, it's just like the difference between checking texts on your phone and watching Lawrence of Arabia. It just uses the whole battery. And I think of her every time to this day. I think of her every day anyway, but it's like, and then there's some people who appear to thrive on it. I don't know how.
I don't know how either.
I don't know how. It's literally like living on Lucky Charms. Like, where's the protein? Where's the fiber? Where's the nutrition? But anyway, or maybe they don't, and they're just good at. I don't know. I was never good at showbiz. It's my
downfall.
Maybe
your soft spot.
No, because I'm really happy that I've gotten to be this age and I've still got my personhood. It's no. I think maybe I would have said that 20 years ago, but I don't like it. I don't find anything valuable or nurturing or healthy in the darling air kiss thing, and I'm still working from a really strong place inside myself, and people who get me, and young actors say to me, "How do you do that? How do you do that? Tell me how to do that." And I'll have to mentor them. Nobody ever says to me, "God, don't you get tired of being a big," nobody ever says that to me. They'll ask me, "How do I do that?" Which I love. And I never liked it and never went toward it.
And we'll be right back.
I remember early in my career, literally it was like 5 minutes after Beverly Hills Cop, I met Carrie Fisher. And, how many times have you interviewed her?
Oh, only once, and it scared the hell out of me.
Oh, really? Okay, well, she did have, but anyway, I saw the witty, alluring, she was, and I just was like, gunk. So she takes me to a party, and then she goes off to the bathroom. So it's 1985. You know what going to the bathroom, it wasn't to pee. She goes to the bathroom, and the next thing I know, I'm standing at a table covered with priceless Tiffany lamps, and Elton John says to me, "That's all right, isn't it?" And I'm like, what is happening? And then Rod Stewart comes up, and the whole thing's out of body. I never did see Carrie again that night. But later on, we're standing waiting for our cars, and Barry Diller says, "Do you have $5 to lend me for the valet?" And I never got it back, and that's 40 years ago. So I'm thinking that $5 is worth at least. But anyway, I did see Carrie again, and she said to me, "Bronny, let's go out to dinner." I said, "Okay." So we go out to dinner, and we're in this super, super fancy old school, you could hear a pin drop Chinese restaurant in Beverly Hills. And we haven't even been served yet. And she says, "Bronson, don't have a crush on me." And I said, that was like Carol saying, I was like, "We haven't even discussed that yet." And I said, "Why not?" And she said, "Because I'm a manic depressive and you don't need that." And I said, "Oh, I think I would not mind that." So she stood up and she pulled her dress over her head, and she had Minnie Mouse right over her genitals, a little pair of panties with Minnie Mouse right over her right there.
The JJ.
The JJ. And she had her dress over her head, and she said, "See?" And the owners came and dragged us away and shoved us out the back door. And I never saw her again. But the thing is, isn't that adorable that she did that? She just said don't. And then she showed me why. And we got heaved out of a restaurant while I laughed so hard that I couldn't even stand up. I was like, what's happening? I'm getting heaved out of a restaurant. Because Carrie Fisher has her dress over her head, and God bless her. I know in heaven she's screaming at the story, because the best stories are not added to or subtracted from. They're just, this is what happened. That's what happened.
They're just presented.
You, as I say, you're not shaping, you're not writing, you're simply reporting. That's what happened, and I treasure it. I treasure it. And that morning, my younger brother, thinking I'd get lucky and that she wasn't taking me to dinner to tell me not to have a crush on her, she was taking me to dinner, and that something else would happen. He came to my apartment and shoved a Princess Leia toothbrush under the door with a note that said, "For tomorrow morning." You can't write this stuff.
You can try.
You cannot. You know better than anyone. You can't embellish the shit that happens. Can you say shit?
Yes.
You can say fuck and shit?
Yes.
Say fucking shit. All right. We need to tell them,
did you ever
whoever's going to see this, that we have the same hair, and that seems like a good omen to me.
Okay.
Okay?
Then I won't change mine.
Well, I don't think you could, because this has been, the reason I'm telling you that is not because I don't think you can, but I know that when you have a cowlick this strong, there's nothing else you can do. Because this is the same haircut I had when I was 5 and went to Sunday school. There is nothing else you can do, right?
Don't you go to Sunday school anymore?
Dude, that S-curve, I know that S-curve.
That just happens.
It's like there. And if they want to make you look like Rod Stewart, it's going to take an hour and a half. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Actually, when I did Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F., the director, who was a sweetheart, never directed a movie in his life, he decided he wanted my hair to look like Rod Stewart. Well, I had to use a wig. And they forgot to have one made, which takes 6 weeks. And they forgot. So about 3 days before the film, they take me to a wig place, and they said, "We're going to have to go into that bin over there." And I said, "Oh, that's going to be great." And they pull out this thing that looked like a dead possum that animal control had thrown in a dumpster, and they dyed it, and they put it on my head, and it didn't even fit. It kept lifting up and back. And the hairstylist, who was wonderful, she did who's that? Ryan Gosling, and she did his hair in Barbie. And that's her work. And she said, "Bronson, can you? Is there any way you could just keep doing that during every take?" And I said, "Because," and she said, "because otherwise they're going to have to CGI it, or it'll end up on camera and everyone will know that we used a secondhand wig. Please, Bronny." So I said, "Yes, okay. So I'm just going to make it a character thing." So I did that as Serge. And I never saw the movie because I don't watch myself.
At all?
Ever, for any reason. The only time I'll do it is for post-production sound, when they have to correct something, and then I have to watch myself. And then I go home and take a bath in muriatic acid because I just made a promise to myself. At the very beginning of my career, I was working with people who you could tell had watched themselves. And that's not something I want to carry around. I don't want that yoke on my shoulders. I don't know what's my good side, my bad side. I don't know anything, and I don't want to know. And the people that have to carry that around are there's enough. We have enough crap to carry around. I don't want to know that, anything.
How did you get that way?
Because I worked with movie stars who were so hyper conscious of what they did that was charming and what they did. You have to be willing, it's so obvious, but here's my motto that I developed at that time. And my motto is, when it comes to acting or anything on camera, do your best to inhabit it fully and then forget about it, because there's nothing you can do. So my motto is, live it and leave it. And what makes that possible is, don't watch yourself, don't critique, don't say, I wish they'd used a different take, just walk away. Walk away. And that has worked for me, because if you want to really, really dig, you're going to have to look ugly, because you're going to have to do ugly crying if you really want to dig, and you're going to have to not care. I mean, my favorite actors, Spencer Tracy, he didn't care. He didn't care. He even said once, I don't even know what acting is. And I agree with him. I don't know what it is. Every time I walk onto a set, I'm thinking, it'll come to me, but I don't know what it is. And I don't know that anyone thinks it is. But there are plenty of people who do, how like every cookie recipe starts with that, starts with eggs and flour and brown sugar, whatever. And then you start to make whatever you're going to make. It's got that base. I don't believe in a base. I don't have any idea what I'm going to make. I don't know whether it's going to be meringue or roast beef or anything. I don't want to know, because the camera wants to see you come up with it. And that is what I like. And it's so it's always like gulp, and I love that. I love that experience. And I think the camera does too. If it really looks like, because right now, I'm answering your question, and I don't know what I'm going to say. I'm looking into your face, and I see that you're really listening, so that's galvanizing. And then I'm looking into my own brain and thinking, what's the answer? And that's galvanizing. But as you know, but the audience doesn't know, I had said to the producer, I don't want to chat with Steve beforehand, because then whatever we talk about is almost like regurgitated. And I hope he understands this is a good thing.
I feel that much the same way.
You see what I mean? And so
I like the spontaneity.
A conversation is a conversation. And, if you do a talk show, as you know and I know, but many people don't know, they do a thing called a pre-interview. And I always say, I know that's your job, but I want to tell you so that you're not surprised that any funny story I tell you in the pre-interview, I will not tell on the air. Because that's regurgitated. And if I'm going to do, I used to love to do Letterman. And I was like, Bronson Pinchot and David Letterman can have an amazing conversation about lint. I do not need to tell him the funny stories I told you. And I just want you to know, so you're not blindsided. I'm not retelling anything. So I got on his show once, and he just decided that night, he saw his image on the monitor, and he said, oh my God, it's not just that I'm going bald, but there's a little island of hair here, and then like a little strip of baldness, and then that. So at that time, I had black hair, and it was they were patchy spots, and so they would take this stuff that was like black crayon and fill it in. And I watched him do this hilarious off-the-cuff monologue about taking stock of stuff. So I go on, and he has these little blue cards, with the questions, and I said, "Can I see those?" And I said, "How did you get started in the business?" Nah. What was Bette Midler like? So I threw them all away, and I kept one, and I said, let's talk about my baldness. So I have a bald spot in back, which I don't cover anymore. But anyway, I had all this black crayon on it, and I dragged my fingernails through it, and then I gouged them over the card. I said, see what I do? And that's what we talked about, and it was fantastic. Get the blue cards out of my face. I don't, I always say to people, if they've got a sense of humor, I say, doing a pre-interview is like having pre-sex. Like, I know we're going to have sex tonight, so If you have 5 minutes, meet me at Starbucks. All right. So what I was basically thinking is, I thought, play with your boobs a little bit, and then kind of like move down it. I don't want. No. What the hell? Pre-interview, pre-sex, pre-argument. How about a pre-argument? I know that sometime in the next 48 hours, Steve, we're probably going to have a tiff. So let's just practice. What is that? Actually, that's a bad example because you could have a great pre-argument that would grow into an argument. You really could.
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean you don't like the lint on my shirt? What the hell? How dare you? So pre-argument's actually a great idea. Pre-argument's a brilliant idea. I'm going to have to try that. But everything else is like, what do you mean pre? Are you joking? And that's why I also will do anything. When we did True Romance, I was playing Saul Rubinek's personal assistant. And Saul, God bless his heart, decided that we needed to do extensive improvisation where he just had me go get his Diet Coke and run errands. And I thought, anything you want to do, we're going to do on screen. But as a result, God bless him, he was persistent. He believed in it. So he would come to my dressing room door and knock on the thing, and I would just get down on the floor so he couldn't even see my shadow. And I'm thinking, this is wonderful, because I actually used it later in the big scene where they're all shooting, and I'm in the middle of it. I was like, I don't want to improvise, but I don't want to say no to Saul. So I'm just going to hide from Saul. And, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and I hope I never do. But sometimes people want to, I was like, no, if a camera's rolling, let's improvise. That's my thing. But you want to like order me around so that I know what it's like to be your assistant? No. And I always say, what was that movie that Kim Basinger, I think, did 9.5 Weeks or something, where they just have sex the whole time?
Right.
So sometimes as a joke.
Was Mickey Rourke in that?
I think he was.
I think he was.
With his old face, I think. 2 faces ago. And wherever the face is, it would make some incredible high protein jerky. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, a line that I used to say, which people didn't understand, was they'd say, could you do the dance of joy from Perfect Strangers? And I would say, I will, but you have to be under 5 or over 85. And then I'll do anything. I'll do the dance of joy nude. But if you're in between those ages, my question for you is, if you ran into Kim Basinger, would you ask her to do the sex scene from 9.5 Weeks? And it's so off the wall, they don't know what to say. And again, win-win. Because if they get it, we're best friends. If they don't get it, I'm in heaven. This is so weird, you know what I mean? Just say to somebody in a parking lot in Scranton, it's great. You either hit the bullseye on the dartboard or it just flies out the room, and either way, it's fine by me.
Bronson.
Yes, baby.
You have great teeth. Can I just tell you?
Thank you so much.
They're incredible. I've been watching them. Back with more in a moment.
I'll tell you a story about my teeth.
Okay.
They used to be, when I was in college, I had so many extra teeth in my mouth, besides the wisdom teeth, there were like 3 or 4 others that were excess to requirements. And as a result, all my teeth were crisscrossed like that. And my mother, in typical fashion, we didn't have any money, and so but she took a mortgage out on the house to have them straightened. Because my then girlfriend had said, you better not ever open your mouth if you ever get on camera, because all you're going to play is immigrants with those teeth.
Thank you.
And God bless her, this is true, because there is a, you know how wonderful the universe is. The last I heard of her, she had Bell's palsy and was 300 pounds and performing in cabaret, but not the play cabaret, just a cabaret, like the kind where they don't even pick up the cigarette butts. Yeah, that's all you'll ever do. But don't ever show your teeth. Okay, hon. But I fixed them. But I did play immigrants, and I had a damn fine time doing it.
Yes, you did.
And I still get messages from people that say, my family came over from Iran in the 80s, and we were like, oh my God, nobody understands us. And then they stumbled into the show and said, oh, there's hope. That's not how it really is. People aren't kind to us, but there's a fantasy situation where they are kind to him. And he's the quote unquote outsider, but he's actually calling the shots in a weird way just through the kindness of his heart. So I still get that today, that these immigrants that came over, and I based the character on my grandfather who came over from Italy with no money and no English. And so I think, God, wouldn't he love that? Wouldn't he love to know that waves of immigrants afterward particularly got something great out of the show because they were so disoriented, and then I was channeling him, and he'd been so that's what makes it amazing. That's what makes it amazing.
Is it my understanding, this is how I perceive it talking to you, that
This is a fun interview, by the way, and they're rare.
Okay.
They're rare. It's a great skill.
Thank you.
It's a great skill because most of them. Where's the camera? Is that a camera?
Yes.
You see how old school I am? I just had to ask because remember when they were
Huge.
They were huge.
Yes.
90% of interviews are somebody basically saying to you without saying it, okay, I didn't do any homework, so tell me, how did you get the name Bronson Pinchot? Tell me, what's Eddie Murphy like? And it's not an interview. This is an interview, and I'm really enjoying it.
Thank you very much. I got a note card once. I'll just throw this in as an aside, from Betty Davis after I interviewed her, and she sent me a card that said, "Dear Mr. Kmetko, you are really good. Thanks for the interview."
Yeah, that's an understatement.
Betty Davis.
It's an understatement because your eyes are so alive, and sometimes what you get during an interview, not that I'm criticizing, is they're thinking about the very next question they're going to ask. They're not even listening to what you're saying. And I don't fault them because somebody somewhere said, you better get these 6 questions in and it better be 3 minutes long. But she knew what she was talking about.
Thank you.
You're so sincere and adorable. And you've got my hair, which is, with that.
You can have it back when we're done.
No, but that's called mirroring, except you didn't do it on purpose. But the way to make somebody trust you, they say, is to mirror them.
Right.
And then you come in and there's...
I've seen enough shrinks.
Huh?
I've seen enough shrinks.
Yeah, and the funny thing is when there's, what do I want to call it, unintentional mirroring, you're like, aw. Yeah. Plus we've been around.
Oh, God.
No, but we've been around in that, and there's a reason for that. Either because we refuse to go either because we refuse to go away or because we do it well.
Well, it says still here Hollywood.
Well, I just realized that's true. But, I did a podcast with dear, sweet Stephen Baldwin recently, and we're having a very nice time. And it becomes clear to me he doesn't realize we did a movie together 30 years ago.
Oh.
So you talk about twinkle, because he's talking about my career in chronological order. And then he gets to the year that we did the movie together, and I'm having so much fun. And he said, God, your face is so full of glee. It's wonderful. I said, well, we did a movie together. And then he did this wonderful thing where he retraced his whole life and went, oh my God, we did. It was really fun. But you were about to ask me a question and I interrupted.
No, that's okay. I like.
Do you remember the question?
Hell no. Let's see.
Can we recover it through archaeology?
One of the things, it was, there have been several times, but I don't like interrupting people when they're talking to me.
But that's another great technique that's very rare. But I want to get back to your question if we can.
Okay. I was going to ask this earlier when we were talking about Carrie Fisher. And I got the distinct impression from you that you were very impressed by her and very...
She was so witty.
Wasn't she? That's what scared me about sitting down to interview her. I thought this woman could cut me to shreds.
But she wouldn't have. She had a big heart. She had a big heart. She was so witty, and she was so effortlessly witty. She was almost witty in spite of herself. She was oozing. I said this to Julia Roberts. I was doing a benefit performance with Julia Roberts. She was way across the room. It's a gigantic soundstage, and there were 30 of us there, and it was a benefit performance to raise money for the LA Shakespeare Festival. And everybody was, Tom Hanks was there, Ewan McGregor was there, Helen Hunt was there, and then I'm sitting next to Keanu Reeves. We're doing Much Ado About Nothing. And Julia's way across the room. I've never been introduced to her. I don't know that I ever will be introduced to her. So Keanu leans over. I wish I did a great Keanu imitation. And starts to mumble something. And I had never, and I hadn't been introduced to him, but he starts to mumble something. And I realized to my horror and delight that he is giving me extensive direction on how he wants me to play my part, because I was playing his henchman. Now, I don't know what my face looked like, but the next thing I know, because I was listening and trying to take in all the facets of him directing me on how to play anything, particularly comedy. And I'm just taking it in and looking at my options, which are laugh, be polite, commit suicide. You know, all of a sudden I look up and Julia Roberts is standing right here. She doesn't say anything. She offers me her arm as if we're going to go to the opera. That didn't take any. So I get up and I take her arm and she starts to walk me away and her eyes are like chandeliers. She's so full of glee. And when we get out of earshot, she says, "Can I just tell you, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on in this room, Bronson. A lot. But nothing can come close to you. I'm going to guess listening to Keanu Reeves give you direction at length?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "That's what I thought. It's the funniest two-shot I've ever seen in my life. It's genius. And now I'm going to take you back and deliver you back to Keanu Reeves, Bronson." So she delivers me back. What Keanu was telling me was that wherever he went on stage, wherever he chose to go, in the genius of his instinctual comedic prowess, I was to go with him. That's what he was telling me, but he was telling me line by line. In the play, Much Ado About Nothing, there's 4 or 6 songs that are Elizabethan songs. And that we had James Taylor, who had decided he was going to do 13 or 14 songs. And we had been asked, every time James plays a song, you all will dance. So I danced for like 3. And then on the 7th one, I just stopped dancing. Then she appears like a genie. "Julia, Bronny, when it's charity, we dance." And I said, "I'm not dancing." She said, "Well, you're dancing with me." So she starts to dance. I'm like, well, how am I going to say no? Meanwhile, his direction to me, I decided the best thing to do was to hew to it with every fiber of my being. The audience found this very, very, very amusing, because I decided that being close to him meant a quarter of an inch. Wherever he went, I went with him a quarter of an inch away to where we were doing like that walk that the monkeys do. Mm-hmm. Here we come. And they were right. So I was glued to him. It was kind of like the directorial version of Mickey Mouse in The Sorcerer's Apprentice, Be Careful What You Wish For. So the audience is thinking it's maybe the funniest thing they've ever seen, partially because it might have been, and partially because he was steaming. Like, "No, I don't want you near me anymore," because people think it's funny and they don't think I'm funny, because they were sane and they had eyes, but they got something. They knew something was up, and I would not stop, because I had been told by one of the titans of comedy how to play my role, so I did it as told. And there's Julia in the corner, like, her eyes, she looked like a crystal shop. Her eyes were so full of sparkles. So I follow him around. But what I was getting to is we were talking about, we were talking about something. I mean,
Kim Basinger.
We were talking about that. So finally, we're done and everybody's milling around, and she comes up to me and says, "That's one of the most fantastically bratty things I've ever seen in my life. And you really took a sow's purse and made it into I'd like to see a sow's purse. That'd be fashionable. But you took a silk purse and made it into Bronny, you took a sow's ear and made it into a silk purse. And then she shakes her head around so she looks even more beautiful. And she says, "Am I anything like what you thought I'd be?" And I said, "Nope." And she said, "How so?" And I said, "I thought the twinkle in your eye was movie star twinkle, and you were born with it. But it obviously comes from you being the most observant person in the room." And she said, are you trying to make me fall in love with you? Who gets these experiences? It was a real conversation. I was saying, I get it now. I just thought you were born with it. And she was saying, nobody ever gets that. And it was marvelous. And the fact she came over and gave me her arm and said, you taking direction from that is brilliant. And I just wanted you to know. And then she gives me back. She puts me back in the snake pit. She could have taken me over there, but it was wonderful. All the wonderful.
She's very good at that kind of stuff.
She's, what she gained in me was a lifelong, I won't hear anything except praise for her, because that was amazing. It was witty, it was incisive, it was bratty, and it was also humane, because it was everything. It was like, I'm going to rescue you, but then I'm going to put you back. And then she came over later, leaned over so that we were staring right at her cleavage and said, as this rehearsal drags on, I wonder if Bronson may be finding me more alluring, and Keanu, you might be finding me less alluring. I don't know. And she walked away. She's just, this is wonderful.
She is wonderful. I did an interview with her in London when she was promoting Notting Hill.
Oh, yeah.
And I had just finished interviewing Hugh Grant.
He's a handful. He looks like he'd be a handful.
Yeah, he is a handful.
But I mean, like right on the razor's edge, like delightful, but like you wouldn't want it on a bad day.
Right.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's some people you just don't want to cross.
But then you could imagine becoming best friends over 10 years and then you're on that side of it. But yeah.
Well, Julia was coming in after that interview. We were doing her next. And I had interviewed her at least half a dozen times. And we just hit it off from the first time. From Pretty Woman, we hit it off. And I said to my cameraman, because I knew this was going to happen, I said, be rolling when Julia walks in. And sure enough, she walked in, snuck up behind me, and threw her arms around me. Well, I knew we'd get that video. And my camera guy said, how did you know she was going to do that? Lucky guess. Just a lucky guess.
Yes, and also your good instinct, which is why you're so good at this. You just knew. That's what's good about it. Don't anyone ever tell anybody, don't ever tell anyone or either of us, tell me what's by the books. Just roll. Just roll, because it's her. Now, you wouldn't have done that. You wouldn't have dared do that with Hugh. I just think his wit is delightful, but I would not want to be on the bad end of it ever. It would be devastating. But it's what makes it fun. I mean, it really is like watching brain surgery. I think he's wonderful. But then there are people that I've adored all my life, and you work with them and you think, oh my God, you're poisonous. So I'll go back to being distant. I mean, like, no.
I'd love to ask you to name names.
Oh, I know you would. Well, I'll tell you what. As I write this memoir, I keep saying to my manager, I'll write, and then I walked on the set, and there was, and then I just put the word in capitals, redacted. And she says, what the hell is that? And I say, oh, I'm going to make a file, which I'll give to you and all the other people I hope survive me, and that can be in the edition that comes out after I'm dead. And she says, well, you'll tell me, won't you? She's got a cigar. It's great. I mean, if I tried to play Susan Ferris is her name. If I tried to play her in a movie, they'd say, stop. But Bronson, honestly, I mean, she's got tattoos and a cigar, and just say to me, I don't know if I can play this character. I'll show you what she does. Go ahead.
I don't know if I can play this character.
Oh boy, get out. And then I go back. I mean, she's just adorable. And whenever I do a red carpet, she's standing 3 feet behind me like somebody else's bodyguard, not mine. Because you better do this interview, and you better be charming, and you better not say you are getting, asked the same questions. It's just not. And she stands there. I mean, she really stands there like, it's hilarious. It's a duo act because she's got a heart like a marshmallow. But anyway, she says, well, you're going to tell me, aren't you? And I'll say no, because if you ever, there's 40% of it is too good and too risky to ever tell. It's just unbelievable. The stuff that's in it is unbelievable. The stuff that's in it is unbelievable because you can't believe it wasn't written by Charles Dickens. I mean, my first memory is my father trying to kill my mother and basically succeeding, except at the last second she got him off and got us out of the house, and that was the best thing that happened in my childhood. But
the best thing?
It was rough because my father was the most enthusiastic and ingenious abuser that you can imagine. And he did it right in front of the kids. And she always did somehow a funny punchline about it after the police dragged him away that made us laugh even though we were crying. And that was like a masterclass in no matter what, you have to put a button on it. And the button has to be funny or you're just going to die. And yeah.
I'm sorry, Bronson. That
No,
sounds
you
rough.
mustn't be sorry because it's like saying to the diamond, I'm sorry that lasers came at you and gave you facets.
One time when I got fired from E, Julia contacted me and said if there's anything I can do to reverse this. She was so sweet.
See, you're making me, no, I couldn't love her anymore, but that's beautiful.
Yeah. She sent me flowers. Yeah, she was just the best. She gave me some of my best interviews. And what was really I've been trying to get her now, but I can't get through her publicist because I'd love to have her come sit here. But
see, that confirms to me what I felt. You know, but also when we went to dinner that night, and it's every one of these stars and all their starry friends, and for reasons that are just known only to her, she took her big purse and she plopped it on the chair next to her and said, for no reason to nobody, that's so that nobody sits here but Bronson. He's the only person in this room that could possibly make me laugh. Oh, Veal. I mean, she's just a brat and just fantastic.
When I first interviewed her, the first thing was Pretty Woman, and I had seen it the night before. And I walked in and I said, just as she was sitting down, I said, you know, anybody ever tell you have the world's greatest smile?
Yeah.
She smiled through the whole interview. She said, no, I can't stop, which is exactly what I wanted anyway.
When she's so, you know, and she's so, you know, you can feel it. You remember you will all remember the first time you see her, you think that just can't be any more accessible and twinkly. And as I said to her, you got the twinkle, but it's not because you're just putting it on. And we all know people that can put it on really well. They can put it on really well. I keep seeing Keanu, you know, visiting dead children or dying, and then everybody says how soulful he is. And I think, well, if he's so soulful, why did he give me direction for 43 minutes without reading the room? You know, no, I mean, I actually admire him for that. But you know, anyway, but she's the real thing. There are people that can, I think they're very scary. They can adopt the twinkle, woo, and then you get to see them, and it's just like a piece of jewelry. But she's got it, yeah. It's great to be able to talk about her without even meaning to, because it's not like you said, who's the most interesting, you know. No, it just came out, so that's kind of fun. I hope she learns about it. Go ahead.
I hope so too. You can tell her, you know. Steve's doing this podcast. He'd love to have you as a guest. What's the favorite movie you've ever done?
True Romance.
How come?
Because I had not had an opportunity to do what I was trained to do in acting school until that time. And by that time, it was Beverly Hills Cop and then 6.5 years of Perfect Strangers. And then finally I have a role where I can speak in my own voice and do what I was born to do, which is to, you know, Tony Scott said to me 1,000,000 times, "You're not sneaking funny stuff in, are you?" And I said, "No, but the performance is funny, but it's funny because the character clearly is calling on his sense of the absurd, the absurd quality of the moment, to walk the razor's edge of a very upsetting moment. And I'm so proud of it because it's, you know, I'm not kidding around, but it's also funny and it's also very sad. And that's what I was born to do. I wasn't entirely born to do pure comedy, and I certainly wasn't born to do Eugene O'Neill and just be terribly, you know, people that really are great tragedians. Vanessa Redgrave, I mean, you've seen her on stage, and it's like wipes, you know, it wipes the floor with any, you know, she comes from a place so intensely deep. I'll tell you a funny story. When she did Orpheus Descending in New York, she stayed at the apartment of Ted Mann, who used to run Circle in the Square. And then I did a play at Circle in the Square shortly afterwards, and all her stuff was still there in her bedroom and the bathroom. And I revered her so much. That I used to, part of my preparation was I would sit on the floor in the hallway outside her bedroom, just trying to remember what she brought to every performance, which is this, she's reaching down through the crust of the earth and the molten nickel to the essence of pain. And it's just astonishing to see. So later, I did a play with a wonderful actress who actually had been her personal assistant for a while. And I said, you were Vanessa Redgrave's personal assistant? I love her. And she said, yeah, didn't you stay in Ted Mann's apartment right after she was there? And I said, yes. And she said, yeah, she says you took her towels? I said, no, I didn't take her towels. And I remember my girlfriend joining me there for some weeks. And I remember my girlfriend, typical, I mean, it's just like great lines. She had two great lines in her life. One of them was, oh my God, these are the cheapest. Where did she get her beauty supplies? CVS? That's the first thing she said. The other thing she said that was genius was, I saw this guy who was high on fentanyl or something outside my house in Malibu, and he climbed up like Spider-Man and was kicking the glass with his, you know, like backwards like a donkey. And I thought, uh-oh. So I run upstairs. By that time, he's gotten up there. I had said to my girlfriend a million times, do not sleep with the windows open. Sleep with the windows open. The guy's already over her, literally over her, while all the dogs are wagging their tails. So I was wearing this skin-tight orange shirt with a little blue anchor on it, and that becomes important. So I said, out, out, out. And I didn't know what else to say. I just backed him out till we were on the balcony, and he said, give me your shirt. And I thought, all right. I took it off and gave it to him, and he said, now let me through the house. I said, no. So he jumps off the balcony and staggers away, and then we call the police. And by this time, I'm like this, and she's like this. They gave her one of those little blankets. So the completely unimpressed cop is like, all right, you know what what was he wearing? I said, that's easy. My orange T-shirt. Orange T-shirt. About what time was it? I said, it was like, well, about 9. My girlfriend is like, she's in shock. And then he goes, okay. What color hair? And I said, kind of like nasty, skanky blonde. And my girlfriend says, wait, go back 2 pages. Okay, the shirt, it was more of a terracotta. And she was a photographer in her defense, but isn't that effing genius? And the cop just does the most, give me that pen. Just say it was more of a terracotta, and I'll show you. He was a comedy genius. Go ahead.
What color was the shirt?
No, your line is, it was more of a terracotta.
Oh,
I'm
it was
the cop.
All right.
Just take a second and reset. Okay, go ahead.
It was more of a terracotta.
And he looks at me, and I'm like, I know, it's genius, isn't it? The whole thing. He was born to do the dead stare. It was... And I said to her afterwards, so let me get this straight. So there's this drug-fueled, crazy person with, I later found out he'd broken his ankle as he jumped off the bed. With a broken ankle.
Just like John Wilkes Booth.
Like John Wilkes Booth. Lovely. Staggering down the beach in my T-shirt with the crazy ankle and obviously high on drugs. And so you're picturing 2 cops saying to themselves, that might be him. And then the other cop going, yeah, but is that terracotta or is it more like vermilion? I said, that does not happen. Nobody cares. But I still think it's funny. This was more of a terracotta. What? That's my kind of humor. Mm-hmm. And she wanted him to go back 2 pages so she could give him that piece of wisdom.
You were so perfectly cast. My favorite movie of yours is First Wives Club. You were so perfectly cast as a foil for those heavyweights that it was just wonderful to watch you with Bet and Diane.
I finally saw a scene of it by accident, and I agree with you. I had never seen it, and they were doing, on Entertainment Tonight, they were doing a new feature they have, which is called Then and Now, and they just, played scenes of mine starting with Risky Business and going all the way through last year, and they just get your kind of whatever free association in real time. So I saw it, I was like, God, that's funny. Hell. But I'll tell you my favorite story that happened on that.
What?
Give me some little thing. Because it was Maggie Smith and her clutch purse. No, give me a pillow. I'll show you what she did. Because this is what pros do. Thank you. So no one ever introduced me to Maggie Smith. She was just sitting next to me with a little clutch purse, her character's clutch purse. And I sat down next to her and I said, when I was 18, someone took me to see the movie you did of Othello with Laurence Olivier, and after your death scene, I literally had to be carried out. I was so moved. I'll never forget that. So this is her clutch purse. Now you say any part of that and I'll show you what she did. Go ahead.
I had to be carried out.
Honestly. And it was the most adorable thing I've ever seen. It was like, no, we're not going to compliment each other. We're both pros. I mean, it's everything with a smack. Smacked me with her clutch purse. And it was the greatest compliment ever. It's the greatest thing ever. And what I'm also very happy about is she was crying one day. I don't want to see Maggie Smith cry. I said, what on earth is the matter? I've got an abscess. And I asked someone if I could go to a dentist, and they said no. I said, well, it just so happened that the producer of the movie had produced my then girlfriend's movie, Clueless, Scott Rudin. So I said, just hold on a second. So I go to Scott, said, Maggie Smith's crying. Somebody said she couldn't go to the dentist. And a limousine pulled up and grabbed Maggie and took her to the dentist. And that was just because I just knew him. She was too English to understand that if you go to a first AD, of course they're going to say you can't leave. She way, way, way too British for that. And I was like, well, I'll just ask the executive producer and you will, and boom, off she went. And
good for you.
Well, it just felt incredible. It was like, she wouldn't let me compliment. I'm going to get choked up, but she wouldn't accept a compliment, but I gave her something more meaningful, which was, I got her to a dentist, and it was incredible. You could never ask for that kind of, you know what I mean? No one ever really, I saw Mickey Rooney once, and all I wanted to do was take his hand, and he didn't want to be touched. And he said that he had a hand infection, but he just didn't want to be touched, which I understood. But I just so wanted to just hold his hand for 1 second and tell him how much I loved all those old movies, the old musicals, and it's like, okay, well, that's not good for him. Doesn't matter what you want.
Doesn't work for him, yeah.
It doesn't matter what you want, but how she didn't want to compliment, and she didn't want me to talk to her and say, as an actor, you've meant so much to me, but I did get her tooth taken care of, and what the hell? How many times would you get that opportunity?
Yeah.
So it was special.
Thank you, Bronson. I'm done.
What is he talking about?
This is over.
You're damn good. So next time I see you, you better have the camera running, because I will definitely
give me a hug from behind.
100%.
Okay.
And stay there.
All right.
Still Here Hollywood is a production of the Still Here Network. All things technical run by Justin Zangerly. Theme music by Brian Sanashin. And executive producer is Jim Lichtenstein.